The doormat. The doormat. There it lies, with a pleasant greeting of welcome home emblazoned upon it, and all it gets is routinely overlooked and trampled on. But it never flinches. It never backs away from performing its function. Many of our victims find themselves regarded as doormats by our kind. Not only is this evidenced by the way that we regard you, but it is also as a consequence of the way that we treat you. It is not those factors alone, however, that cause me to ascribe the label of doormat to a particular appliance. Much of it comes from the thinking, attitude, and mindset of the relevant victim. I have a sister. She's called Rachel. Whereas I trod the path which has led me to where I am today, Rachel found herself becoming a doormat. She was routinely trampled on by all the members of our family, and I watched and I observed as we grew older as to how this manifested. As time progressed, and with the increasing awareness that I have obtained, allied with the observations of the good doctors, I identified certain characteristics that she, as an empath, has, which I have also seen in those who have been my primary source victims. I've concluded that whilst numerous of these victims have come close to being doormats, only 3 have actually achieved that status, alongside that of my sister. Now, it is a mistake to think that a doormat would be regarded as weak. Naturally, my kind think this, but that's part of our narcissistic mechanism for the maintenance of control over you by pouring scorn on your traits and how they lead you to be treated. Those who are doormats actually exhibit a different kind of strength. They are weak in that they fail to assert themselves with sufficient emphasis to enable them to escape the worst of our treatment. But they possess a strength by virtue of those characteristics. To be able to have those characteristics and keep them whilst being abused, ignored, trampled on, and taken for granted is perversely a form of strength, and one which we welcome. Of course, lesser and mid-range narcissists welcome this unconsciously, the greater and the ultra welcome it in full awareness. We require appliances that will keep functioning, obeying us, pumping out the fuel and complying without breaking down and malfunctioning the first time that matters become rough. Finding a doormat amongst our victims is gratifying because it means that this person will not immediately depart. They've no desire to do so. It goes further, however, because they wish to stay, not only for our reasons, but for their own fulfillment as well. And therefore, the doormat is a choice victim for our kind, because they actively choose to stay, notwithstanding what is being done to them. What are the main traits that constitute a doormat? First of all, the individual is naturally an empath, and therefore constitutes empathic traits which exceed their own narcissistic traits. 2. The individual is sensitive and prone to bouts of considerable guilt. 3. This person has learned to survive hostile environments by meeting our need for gratification. The first and foremost applies to the submission to control and the provision of fuel, but it goes further. The doormat will gratify us by allowing us to do what we want, recognizes our need and right to do so, allows us to utilize whatever resources we see fit, and caters for all our needs in terms of fuel, trade provision, and residual benefits. 4. The doormat's perception of love has become skewed. This person seeks love through the excessive accommodation of another's needs. This may not just be us when we have attached them as a primary source to us, but in respect of other individuals. Those individuals may not be narcissistic, but the doormat still wishes to accommodate the wishes of other people, something, of course, which will then irritate us and lead to conflict, because the doormat regards his or her role as one of accommodating everybody, because then that means that they will feel loved, appreciated, liked. 5. The doormat simply gives too much. They do not take. They give of themselves on every level, from their emotions, their dedication, their time, their energy, their thoughts and their resources. They are impressively resourced in these matters and appear to have almost limitless time, energy, etc., although eventually it does become evident that they have not, and there are only finite amounts. 6. The doormat does not feel safe unless he or she gives. If they perceive that they are taking, this causes them alarm, even distress. If they are neither giving or taking, they feel restless and out of their comfort zone. They need to provide and to give, and it allows them to fulfill their role, and in turn embodies a sense of safety for them. Once they begin to feel safe, they will continue to give in order to remain in this safe place. This is why the doormat is particularly drawn to our kind, because we are the takers, and we take on a vast scale. We cater in our own way for the doormat, and even though the doormat may not know what we are, their coupling with us, driven by their own addiction, provides them with an innate sense of safety and security, although, of course, this is misled by their emotional thinking. 7. The doormat must meet the emotional needs of the narcissist. We are empty. We are voids, and your emotional attention, your fuel, needs to be poured into us. The doormat feels a need to ensure that those excessive emotional needs are met, although fails to realize that this can never be achieved, and therefore remains hucked, driven by their addiction and their emotional thinking, and beholden to us, in as the doormat tries to achieve the impossible. I've observed that happen with regard to my sister's relationship with my mother, matriarch. 8. The doormat suffers low self-esteem, but this is boosted by the success of the narcissist. My victims, who were doormats, found that their self-esteem was increased by my achievements and my accomplishments. Not because they commandeered them for themselves, but because they felt that they had been able to contribute to that, as a consequence of allowing me to shine, to surge, by catering to all of the background needs, if you will, that allowed me to get on with the important stuff. I watched my sister gather her self-esteem from being linked to the achievements of matriarch, my father, and also me. It's a curious behaviour and isn't unlike our stealing of traits from those around us in order to add them to our construct, and in turn make us look better and more attractive. However, the doormat doesn't acquire the traits of our success at all. What they do is, they revel, given their empathic nature, in our success, which they feel they've been able to help us do, because they have catered for the minutiae, the mundane matters, catering to those things that would otherwise preoccupy our time, leaving us to get on with the shiny, special, glorious, amazing things instead. They are the permanent backroom staff that allows us to shine on the stage. 9. The doormat has a high tolerance to emotional abuse. The lashing out through heated fury and cold fury from our kind against the doormat causes the doormat to realize that the emotional need of our kind has increased, i.e. the need for fuel and control. This signals to them that they must leap into action. They have a call of duty, and rather than find the emotional abuse debilitating, at least at first, they regard it as a useful signal for them to do something in order to cater to the needs of the narcissist, to give control, to provide fuel, although, of course, they don't realize this is specifically what they are doing. They regard it as taking steps to assist, to be supportive, to listen. And in turn, they give the control that we crave and pour the fuel in our direction. Unfortunately, for the doormat, all they are actually doing is allowing a pressure to build up of this repeated emotional abuse. The doormat can tolerate it for longer than a standard empathic victim, but then there comes a point where the threshold is reached. The pressure can no longer be sustained and withheld, and at that point, there is a substantial and serious and damaging effect on the doormat from the release of this pressure. They break down. 10. The doormat feels guilt when catering for their own needs, and therefore, almost in a masochistic way, will place themselves in the firing line once again with our kind in order to ease this guilt. 11. The doormat actually feels undeserving of being loved. They want to be loved for what they do rather than what they are. They regard themselves as fundamentally unworthy of love, save when they are carrying out their role. With my sister, I saw this with both my father and my mother. My father emphasized how it was important to help others, and my sister saw that as a clear signal to flagellate herself in catering for the needs of others, and especially of our kind. My sister also explained to me that in respect of matriarch, that she never says that she is happy, but that my sister new matriarch was happy with her because of how my sister felt, namely devoid of guilt and valued because of her excessive giving. Now, of course, what my sister did not realise was that matriarch is incapable of feeling happy. I regarded her thinking at the time as deluded, but I didn't correct it because it served my purposes well. In terms of the empathic constitution of an individual who is a doormat, they will have a majority and a very significant majority outcome with regard to codependency as a consequence of their empath detector test. They will also show, at the minimum, strong cadre, more likely moving into majority. So the outcome for them would be somewhere in the region of 65% and above, evidencing a codependent school, and as a minimum 30% with regard to the martyr trait, with regard to the cadre, and more likely higher than that. They will, of course, have other traits, a dash of super empath, maybe some contagion, and certainly standard empath amongst all of that. But the status of doormat is achieved by those who have very high levels of codependency as a consequence of being an empath, and strong minority elements of being a martyr, if not a majority. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.